Thanks for tuning in and welcome back to the shop. It's a little cold in the shop, so let's get back inside our 2013 Mitsubishi Fuso FG that I'm converting into an Overland camper. Last time I was working on the frame for the bed, and clearly that is not enough to hold up a bed, so that's what we're going to continue with today. The next step in the assembly of the bed frame is going to be adding the cross braces, and for the cross braces I'm going to start with some more 1010 extrusion. To do this, I'm going to want to attach the 1010 extrusion to the side of the 4080 extrusion. If you know me at all, you know this is going to involve some more 3D printed pieces. If you're curious as to how I make these little brackets, well, to start with, I design them in Sketchup. It's free and pretty straightforward to use. Next, I load the 3D model into Cura, where I slice it and check to make sure there are no model errors, and then send it to my slightly modified Ender3 V2 printer. Each bracket set uses about 34 grams of PETG carbon fiber filament and takes about 3 hours to print. So roughly 19 printing hours later, I have 3 pairs of brackets at a total material cost of around $4.50 or 75 cents per bracket pair. After the print is finished, I pop the parts off, and using my heat set insert tool, which is basically a soldering iron, I press in the M3 brass threaded inserts. And that's how we end up here. Let me show you how this is going to work. For the first round of cross beams, I'm going to run the 1010 from front to back. If I divide this space up so that I can have 5 of them, that means every 325 millimeters, I need to place a hanger. Because my corners are already effectively joined, I can't slide T-nuts in from the side. I designed the lower half of the bracket to drop into the T-slot, and the upper half to slide across it and lock it in place. Once the two halves are positioned and locked together, this little M3 screw goes in the side and threads into the brass insert that's pressed into the 3D printed part. Of course, I'll have to be dropping the crossbars in place before I put the cap on, but essentially they will be sitting in here with a nut slug in them and then a 1/4-20 bolt through the side to secure it. Oh, and before I install all of those, I want to install my newly printed carbon fiber upper and lower corner pieces. They go here and in the same spot on the underside, and that'll help stiffen up the corners once I bolt in the corner gussets. So to put the upper and lower corners in, I need to start by taking this all apart. And there we go. All 4 corners are now joined with 3 pieces each. We've got one on the top, one on the inside that you can't see here, and another one of these in the bottom. And once we bolt in the final corner gussets, that will become rock solid. But let's get back to these. Step 1 will be popping in the lower half of the bracket centered on my 325 millimeter mark. I'll have one on each side. These brackets are all the same. I didn't mirror it one side for the other. The next bracket is going to go here. The exact position doesn't matter because I can still slide them around a little bit, even though they do snap into place. Now I'm going to need to go and cut my 1010 so that it drops in place. I purchased all of my 1010 extrusion in 20-foot lengths. This was by far the most economical way to get it. I also picked it up from the vendor, so I didn't have to arrange or pay for any oversized shipping. Other than the bolts and insert nuts, I've 3D printed all of my own brackets needed for assembly. Remember the saying, cut 3 times, measure once. That's how it goes, right? All joking aside, I like to use my first cut part as the measuring stick for the follow-on parts. This generally gives me identical finished parts with no variation in length at all. With the cross beams cut, I need to slip some nut slugs in each end of each piece so we have something to bolt to. I just made the exact same mistake as I did in the last video, so let's fix that. That may have been a little bit too quick to see in time lapse, but essentially because I'm using the same bracket on each side, they're not mirrored. So the bolt goes in from one side and the other side, which means my nut slugs in the T-slot need to be on the opposite sides. And of course I put them on the same side. With that now corrected, I can start installing the 1/4-20 bolts that hold this together, threading through the bracket and into the slug. And with the bolts loosely in place, it's time to put the caps on. And lastly, the little M3 screws just to hold the caps in place. Now you may have noticed that I've only been making 3 of the required 5, and that is because, well, my printer is not that fast and it's still making the last 4 brackets. And while that means I can't finish that side, what it does mean, because I now have the frame in place, is I can build this wall frame. This wall is going to be constructed basically the same way as I've made all the other benches and furniture in here, but instead of attaching to the top of the bench, we're going to attach to the front. That may seem a little strange, but it'll come into play much later in the build. After cutting these 3 pieces of T-slot and installing a few more nut slugs and brackets, we have the frame of the wall. Though it's only 1 inch thick, this wall will be forming the main structure and fixed wall for the bathroom and shower area. Well, let's just say that did not go as planned. I knew going into this that I was going to have to fabricate a different bracket for this corner, but I figured I could just get it together short term with what I had. The problem is these brackets aren't really made for going across the extrusion, they're made for going along it, and they're slightly longer than 1 inch. So they do stick out, but they also stick out on the back side, which leaves a little gap here, which means the whole thing can rock in and out. And because I only have it attached on a single point, it's kind of acting like a pivot. Now at the same time, I don't have anything holding it in place at the roof, so it can wobble back and forth, which isn't helping. Obviously that's not going to be the case long term, but right now it's not really working. Super short term solution, I'm just going to tape this to the ceiling. That'll stop it from banging around. Hopefully it won't fall over and damage anything. And that'll give me the time that I need to go and design these lower brackets and let my printer finish printing the bed pieces. And I can print these lower brackets and come up with everything else that I need to attach this securely. I hope you enjoyed that video. If you did, make sure you give us a thumbs up, hit subscribe if you haven't already. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.